Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome to this very special edition of Atlanta Business Radio. It's time for Customer Experience Radio, brought to you by our good friends at Heineken Company. Now here's your host, Jill Heineck.
Good morning and welcome to Customer Experience Radio. I am here with Mike Gomes and Brian Ericson of Cortland Partners, and I'm very excited because we are going to be talking to an official customer experience officer in a company. So let's get started. So I have here Mike Gomes, and he is Cortland's and the multifamily real estate industry's first ever Chief Experience Officer. In his role as CXO, Mike oversees marketing communications, design, architecture, interior design, and product design and innovation teams. And he works across all of Cortland to align the entire organization around a forward-thinking resident and community experience. Brian Ericson is the Vice President of Marketing Insights and Technology for Cortland, and he works to develop a deep understanding of who Cortland's residents are and what makes them love their living experience. He previously spent 8 years in global loyalty program development at IHG, and including a 2-year assignment in Bangkok, Thailand. Thanks, guys, for coming. We appreciate it.
Good morning.
Great to be here.
So let's start just with a basic question on how you define experience in the apartment industry, particularly in 2019. So who wants to start?
So I think broadly from a experience standpoint, it's a combination of the products that you offer. So in our case, the physical product that we offer, both the community itself of apartments as well as the apartment home that you've chosen to live in. The service and services you deliver. So, and I make those two distinctions, service being customer service and services being those other types of things we do to help making your living experience easy. But how do we do it in a way that actually causes you to really want to connect to your apartment as a home and not just four walls and a roof? And that's historically how this industry has been treated, which is where we see a big opportunity for Cortland to differentiate ourselves because the residents really care and feel cared for in the place that they call home.
Well, I think that's a fantastic definition. Do you have anything to add to that, Brian, from your perspective?
No, I mean, clearly it is that mix of the physical and the service. And I think, you know, we as a company are very proud of the really unique and innovative design that we bring to our apartments. And consistently in all the research we do, our prospects, the people that are coming and shopping our apartments, tell us how impressed they are by that and that, you know, it really makes an amazing first impression. We know that matters a lot during that initial decision process, the physical product, the gorgeous pools, all that good stuff. But as we look at surveys throughout the rest of the resident life cycle, not that doesn't remain important, but really the service becomes paramount. And as we look at the research towards the end of a lease term, it is really that experience, the customer service, the problem resolution from the management team. Those are the things that really make or break the overall experience and ultimately are the drivers of whether or not people decide to renew and continue living with us for 2 or 3 years.
Right. So they want to have a beautiful space, but they also want to know that they can make a phone call or walk downstairs or to the management office and be addressed as soon as possible, right? So it could be as easy as a text or a call or an email or a walk-in. That's part of the experience, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so for your feedback from perspectives, what are they comparing your product to? Are you getting that kind of information? Where they're what experiences are they coming from? Where are those opportunities for Cortland?
You know what's interesting is I've only been in the multifamily space, the apartment space, for about 15 months or so, and one of the things that I noticed is the industry still sells itself on the what and not on the how it's going to make the resident feel. So unfortunately, that prospect has a very limited window of time to try to assess the what. Oh, you have a pool, you have a fitness center, you have granite countertops, you have stainless steel appliances. Well, guess what? So really does everybody else. And although I 100% agree with Brian that we do believe that we have an intentional design that does elevate our physical experience, what I'm trying to convince the rest of our organization is that the subconscious triggers repairs that prospect is making on the landscaping and the other cars that are in the parking lot and the cleanliness and the security gate, all of those types of things are contributing to, do I feel like this is the right place for me to call home for some period of time? Yet the industry doesn't market itself that way. It markets on the what, and we really want to pivot and try to help our prospective residents very quickly gain a level of confidence that I'm going to be cared for here. Yeah, everybody's got the pool and everybody's got the fitness center. And at the end of the day, they're better on the margins on one or the other. We really want you to feel comfortable that you're going to feel cared for and that you've made the right decision, because it's not an inexpensive decision to spend $15,000, $20,000 a year on where you're choosing to live. And you're doing so in often a very compressed period of time, trying to figure out where you're going to live next.
Are you seeing any differential notes or responses or feedback from residents in the different submarkets that Cortland's currently in? Are they all wanting the same types of things, or is it regional? Are there specific experiences depending on where they are in the country that they want, or is everyone just basically want the same thing? They want to pay, what they want is beyond what they're paying for.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I'm not sure, and Brian's got a lot closer view into the data, but from a geographic standpoint, because we mostly play in what we call the smile states, so we're in those high growth cities, both population growth and job growth that are often in the sun. Right. So Orlando, Tampa, Atlanta, Dallas, Houston, Austin, Charlotte, Raleigh, Denver, Phoenix, all high growth.
Wow. He said that a lot.
And seriously, in Columbus, Ohio. Which was funny. We kind of got into that market by mistake. Through an acquisition, we acquired a couple of communities and then quickly realized Columbus is almost recession-proof. When you put the government kind of headquarters, and you put a large university, two things that never contract, you're continuing to see the growth in a market like Columbus. So that's been surprisingly good for us. And I would argue our Columbus market product doesn't really look like most of our other product. But for the 160 or so communities that we have, the amenity packages are largely the same. Okay. Landscaping will clearly be different, due to the native plant types, et cetera, and the climate. But for the most part, if you're a 28-year-old living in Houston, there's a good possibility you're going to relocate to Austin or Atlanta or Phoenix at some point, and the level of expectations are roughly the same. Remember, these are all states where people are moving from other locations as well. Of course.
So I was going to ask, there's that retention, like we had a great experience in Atlanta, so we're getting relocated to Houston. So are people moving, intra-Cortland wise, intra-property wise, because of their experience with y'all?
That is certainly the vision, right? And we do know that is happening on a meaningful but limited basis. It's partially just a matter of geographic spread, and even if someone happens to be moving from Atlanta, they're in a Cortland apartment and they're moving to somewhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, turns out Dallas-Fort Worth is a really, really large metroplex, right? So even if they love their Cortland experience and would love to replicate that in Dallas, the chances of us having a property within 10 or 15 minutes of where they specifically want to be in Dallas are, decent, but not great.
Okay.
That's important. So one of the other pieces that we recognized is that although we are a B2C industry, the level of brands that you can name unaided are almost zero. And we know that statistically because when we asked apartment dwellers, who is your apartment manager? The number one answer was none of the above. Like, I can't name any company because the level of naming paradigm in this space. Imagine if every single Hilton was called something else every city you went to in order to be local to that geography. Well, that, for whatever reason, has been the historical naming paradigm. We very much want to establish a brand, not just from an awareness perspective, but then as the consumer does a little bit more research and realizes, wow, your reputation is great. Your reviews online are great. You really do deliver a level of service that borders on true hospitality and not just customer service. Then we can create a level of, I want to seek out Cortland. I would bet today that people who are living in Cortland communities in Atlanta have no idea that we own upwards of 30 in Dallas-Fort Worth and another 20 plus in Houston. So when Brian says that's the vision, we want to make sure that people understand this is Cortland standard regardless of where you live in the country. So if you are relocating, our job is to help educate you that if you loved it here, let us help facilitate you getting to where the right place is for you to live in Houston. And actually not just introduce them to those communities, but how can we help bridge the gap and make that move, which is a traumatic, often anxiety-ridden experience, smooth and easy, while Cortland's doing things that nobody else would consider doing to help me facilitate the next phase of my life.
So what would that look like?
Well, we don't know. I mean, Brian said it's the vision, right? So it doesn't necessarily have a concrete plan to it. Right. But let's just talk a single market like Dallas-Fort Worth. Later this year, we project that we very possibly are going to be the largest homeowner in Dallas-Fort Worth with 12 to 14,000 plus apartment homes. We've done some analysis that indicates that we probably have a community that is 20 minutes or less from every single major employer in Dallas-Fort Worth. So here in Atlanta, as you think of the difference between, well, I was living in Roswell, but now I got a job in Smyrna, or now I got a job, in Midtown, the commute is going to dictate, because it becomes a major drain on your lifestyle, where you may want to live. Our ability to help say, no matter where you want to move in the Atlanta area, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we have you covered. The thing is that the industry is set up to treat every individual community as an individual community, which means it's marketed as an individual community, it's sold as an individual community. We want to build a regional presence that helps as people go from 25 to 28 to 30, move through those life stages. We're at a 3 decades low home ownership right now for people in their 20s and 30s. You smile at me because I know your background. So there are folks that are making decisions to live in apartments, both because they have to, but now also by choice. So how do we make sure that we facilitate that we're the brand that's top of mind that helps you understand that no matter where I want to move in DFW or Atlanta, we've got a community that's right for you.
So how are you doing this in Atlanta? How are you getting that kind of word out that Cortland is the experience that Atlanta apartment dwellers should be looking for, or should at least, look at Cortland when they're looking at other things too, to see, how to differentiate the experience?
So let me start by at least getting people to understand what Cortland is. So remember, I mentioned the naming paradigm is different wherever you go. We have, through the course of probably since October until about now, started renaming all of our communities with Cortland as the prominent brand name.
I've seen.
Cortland at the Battery Atlanta, Cortland at Phipps Plaza, Cortland North Brookhaven, Cortland Decatur East.
3131
Cortland 3131, which is over in Decatur as well. So continuing that, as you drive around town, you keep seeing Decatur. I mean, you keep seeing Cortland in Decatur and in other areas, both inside and outside the core city. What'll start to happen is a lot of people don't even know who their manager is when they live in a given community. Now you go, oh, my sister lived in a Cortland community. She loved it. My cousin lived there. My work colleagues lived there. So you'll just start to build that. What we're also doing, which most companies really haven't done either, is a general brand awareness campaign, not tied to our product, now leasing 2 bedrooms, but instead challenging people to elevate their expectations. That's actually the campaign slogan. We are above and beyond apartment living, and you, as a consumer, should elevate your expectations. So we have an outdoor campaign across all of our core markets outside of the core city of Atlanta. And because of our relationship with the Braves, by owning the apartments, Cortland at the Battery Atlanta, we also have a sponsorship with the Braves as well. That may sound basic, but that is not traditional in the multifamily space to do these types of broad branding campaigns. But when you own over 10,000 apartment homes in the Atlanta market, you have an opportunity to elevate the brand and elevate your awareness. And Brian can then talk about how awareness with a bad reputation, I'd rather not have any awareness, but awareness with a really good reputation is, let's lean into that and own that. And Brian has overseen that strategy, and I'm very proud of where Cortland's reputation stands as well.
Let's talk about that, Brian.
Absolutely. So there is a prominent vendor in the apartment and multifamily space called J. Turner that does keeps track of a score based on online reputation called Online Reputation Assessment, or ORA. And this has really become one of the primary benchmarks and metrics by which companies in the space compare each other in terms of what their residents are saying about them in the broader internet universe. And so it's a complicated algorithm that basically scores every community from 0 to 100 based on its Google reviews and its reviews on Yelp and all those other platforms we know about. So we are very proud of the progress we've made in those rankings over the last 4 years, where we started out as the 10th highest management company in the country in terms of our online rep. And as of last month, we had improved that to 3rd. So we are now the number 3 company of all the top management companies for our overall impression that we're making to prospects out there when they're shopping for apartments.
That's in the country, not just in Atlanta.
That's fantastic.
That is in the country. So as a chief experience officer, having to come in and transform a culture to focus on customer experience is hard.
I bet.
I walked into a company that is very much wired. As he mentioned, we were already 10th a few years ago.
Right.
It's not as if we're starting from flat on the ground.
Right.
This is now about synthesizing all of those individual things that we do well and really now starting to make sure that the prospective consumer is aware of it and the resident truly feels it,
right,
so that we can then continue to create year-over-year growth from a brand awareness perspective, that people now start to seek us out as the preferred apartment community that you want to be able to aspire to live in.
Right. So you mentioned a little bit earlier that, it's primarily B2C business. Are there any B2B opportunities that you're seeking out, for example, for corporate relocation executives or corporate or temporary housing kind of opportunities? Or are you just focused mainly on the consumer or the resident who's just going to have a 12-month and then renew?
We certainly look at those opportunities, but I would say they're more opportunistic than they are strategic for us. So we typically will locate our communities in near employer hubs.
Right.
So as a result, forming a relationship with Toyota in Houston or forming a relationship with other employers like ThyssenKrupp when they come into the Battery and Comcast are natural extensions to just reach out to the local neighbors.
Right.
Because as more and more people want to reduce their commute, finding nearby hospitals, et cetera,
right,
forms an easy partnership. But the notion of corporate relocations or short-term rentals, other business opportunities that are happening in the apartment space, we haven't found a need to chase those alternative business models because our existing business is very strong,
right,
with very strong occupancy.
Got it.
So our main B2B efforts, quite frankly, are on broadening our relationships in the investor community. So the way in which our business works is Cortland is the overall developer and manager of these various spaces, but we bring in capital from institutional investors, and we've had a wonderful track record of success in the last decade. But as Cortland now wants to continue to grow, we just cracked top 20 of overall in terms of size in the country of number of people, number of apartment homes that we own.
Right.
Our goal is to keep growing. We'd love to get into the top 10 in the next year or so. As such, needing to continue to attract capital, whether that's domestic capital or international capital. And too many people go, I've never even heard of Cortland. So we're trying to help our investor relations group broaden the Cortland brand for everything from the endowment funds of universities to family offices of wealthy individuals to pension funds around the country, as opposed to your very traditional New York capital infrastructure.
Right. Wow. So there's a huge path for growth here, and you have a lot of opportunity with the resident experience.
We think that is, and I give the reason I joined the company, and we didn't talk about my background at all, but I'm in what I will call the least sexiest space that I've been in, but potentially the most important. Right. So I did have a lot of people look at me when I left. I worked at Disney for 20 years in the parks division, right? And if you're going to learn about customer experience, it's an unbelievable training ground.
Exactly.
And even though I might not have been purposefully trying to learn about customer experience, the osmosis
you don't have a choice,
happens
really,
from everybody around you. Well, then I left Disney for a wonderful opportunity to help build Mercedes-Benz Stadium and to come work for Arthur Blank. Similarly, Arthur's background with the Home Depot, very customer service oriented. meant I wasn't going in trying to transform that organization more than to try to help Arthur achieve the vision for the stadium that he had set forth, where he wanted to do things differently than had been done traditionally in sports. So how to program that stadium with a level of fan experiences, amenities, services that help to lift the overall experience, because it's got to be the only industry I can think of where you don't have control over the product.
Right.
The football team loses.
Right.
The football team wins.
Right.
You have no control over an
right.
injury, a weird bounce, a bad call, or what have you. So, so you still need to make sure that the experience is good regardless of the outcome. And, you know, we see that certainly with Atlanta United. Those Falcons fans, you know, continue to wear their heart a little close to their sleeve in that case and get a little bit more upset. United's still in that honeymoon phase, having won the MLS Cup already, in its second year. So after the stadium's built, I happened to get a note about this chief experience officer role. And Stephen DeFrancis is the CEO and founder. And Stephen was so focused that this industry has not moved in 10 to 15 years. Look at the hotel industry and where it has moved from a bed and walls to all of the amenities and services, Wi-Fi and free breakfast and free parking and free shuttle and on and on.
Where's free parking?
Yeah.
Tell me where that is.
Not in the city, that's for sure. But they've realized they've had to compete on some of these different pieces and then realize, wait, we can't just compete on the what. We have to go compete on why our experience staying with us is better or different than what you could get down the street in a very commoditized market where you just open hotels.com and see the price of everybody. Well, we're a commoditized market as well from a product standpoint. There's a lot of great developers out there. There's a lot of great product. But I was very intrigued because I went from working in what I'll call entertainment space, which is uber fun, to choice where people choose to live. Like, I'm not sure I could get closer to the core of making an impact or trying to help Cortland make an impact in that regard. So I so believed in the growth of the company. I so believed in Stephen's vision for the company that, and the talent that we have is amazing and the culture we have is amazing. And as a result, if you can take a great culture and help the consumer, your consumer see it, then it's easy, quite frankly, to deliver a great experience when your culture is great.
Well, that's the
what
hard
makes
part.
Disney as good as it does.
Well, that's right. But the hard part with your job and with anyone in your roles is getting your internal teams on board and understanding why this connects so much with the end goal and why the 9 to 5, everything they do every day needs to be an impact towards the goal, right? And I think that is what a lot of companies struggle with when they're in the space, in the experience space, versus customer service, right? Because you're really trying to get the customer to feel cared for, and that's what the words you use. So,
but when the CEO is declaring that this is important, and he's making it one of the core objectives of the company, that even though he may not be able to specifically articulate exactly what he thinks the end experience may be, he's made it clear to everybody that this is a very important area of focus and where we will differentiate, especially if we hit a down cycle economically, where we will stand out as continuing to be the brand that you want to choose as your place to live. I have not worked for a company where I've had to push the rock up the hill. Disney starts that every single day, and Arthur made it very clear as well. So the fact that Stephen has been so committed has brought the rest of the organization around. Now it's about Brian and me and others articulating what the vision is and tying it to business results. That's probably our biggest challenge.
That's hard.
Is how to tie the extraordinary customer satisfaction scores we may achieve or the online reputation and be able to tease it out to say these variables can be isolated to say here's how you get how it's driving bottom line value.
Wow. So how are we doing that, Brian?
Yeah, I want to know the answer to this.
Going to get back to you in that next quarter. No, I mean, we, like I said, we have a very extensive customer and resident satisfaction program. We had over 60,000 completed surveys last year. So we do a lot of analysis, both to understand the patterns, what is ultimately driving resident satisfaction, but to Mike's point, what is really making a difference where the rubber hits the road, which is whether or not people actually renew. So we have done a lot of research on that and looked at a individual resident level, trying to understand what 3 or 4 factors in our surveys are most correlated to their actual renewal outcome. But then also at a community, at an individual business level, trying to understand the communities that perform really well on this metric or that metric.
Right.
How does their overall renewal rate compare to the rest of our portfolio? Right. And again, it circles back to a lot of the very simple, very basic customer service stuff that applies across almost all industries.
Right.
So it's the question about the overall customer service you receive from the team. It's problem resolution. It's communication from management.
Yes.
Those are the things that really differentiate the top tier, the top renewing communities from. And frankly, we don't have a lot of bottom tier communities. They're just sort of closer to average.
Right.
But in terms of pushing that and really infusing that through the culture, we as a company talk about surveys and survey results all the time. So the communities are getting alerts every morning about new surveys that came in.
Right.
They're reaching out to us with questions about them all the time. And Mike and I have done a bit of a world tour over the last 6 months, I guess, going around to each of our markets and presenting to the community managers, talking about reinforcing why all this matters and why the experience at the end of the day, we believe, is what's really going to take us to the next level.
It's as much and maybe more inspiration than it is, here's your toolkit.
Right.
We'll let the training and development teams help build the toolkits. We want to get them inspired and then be able to use some level of metrics as a backup to help validate this is why we're telling you this is important. And so far we've been successful in terms of, but we'll probably be every 6 months just continuing to move around the country to make sure we're meeting with those teams. A lot of people tend to think that operations is customer experience, and our operations has a significant role in that.
Right.
So we want to make sure that that notion of I feel cared for as a resident is only going to come through because of that interaction they have. But we've been spending as much time in the rest of the company helping make sure those folks who may not touch the customer directly recognize decisions that you're making. We have our own construction team. We have our own design team. We have our own investments and finance group. Oftentimes, if you don't touch the customer, you don't necessarily think or you're blind to how your role impacts it.
That's right.
And at Disney, we used to call it roll in the show. I don't care if you worked in the laundry facility and never touched a customer, your knowledge of what you were doing and the integrity of the cleanliness of those towels and sheets and costumes that were coming out of your laundry facility because you knew how you were contributing to the guest experience. It's hard to do that in a company. So we've been spending some time trying to help make sure the rest of these folks who only think of their job task recognize they do things that help either set operations up for success or not. That will continue to allow us to be better than who we may have been, a couple of years ago.
Well, you talked a little bit about problem resolution, and that in most businesses is where, as you said, rubber hits the road. I think that's where people will say, we know things. Most customers will say, we know it's not going to be 100% smooth in all my transactions, anything that I do or buy or whatever. But it's how we respond to any issues that's going to make the difference in getting a 5 score or a 10 score, let's say, on a survey. So what things are you sharing or hearing from your teams on the ground that are customer facing? What things are they doing at the property levels that are kind of, wowing the resident? At that level. Do you have any kind of research or feedback on that? Or is there anything specific they're doing to kind of give them that wow experience, even if it's feels like a disaster to the resident?
Well, so there's a couple of different questions in there. The first one started around this notion of service recovery, right? And the way in which we're organized is we have regional directors of operations who have their region. So they own Florida. They own Carolina, for instance, for Charlotte and Raleigh. If an issue ever gets beyond that individual community manager, where the community manager, for whatever reason, wasn't responsive, they didn't like the response, and they escalate the issue, our DOs, as we call them, our directors of operations, are so quick to engage directly to not only earn back the trust, but when you do it super well, right, then you get somebody who says, wow, I've lived in a lot of apartments. I've never had an executive call me as quickly as they did, show genuine care and empathy for what I've been going through, and now jump in and resolve it. And oh my goodness, and they also, they gave me food for lunch, whatever it may be, those little things. So that's one. The surprise and delight side of it is a little different, right? At Disney, we call those magical moments, and we had a very actually planned strategy to distribute the notion of coming up with magical moments all the way out to the edge. Each individual team was challenged daily to go create a magical moment. They're a little easier to create when you've got kids in a theme park.
When you're at Disney.
Yeah, when you're at Disney, right? It becomes, let's put this girl at the very front of the line and she gets to cut the ribbon to open Magic Kingdom today, and there's pictures and cameras and all that kind of thing. Countless of those happened. Well, the way in which our credo of our company is, where we do believe that the details matter, we do believe in this notion of everyday delight and this notion of hospitality, but we have preached for years that every moment and every opportunity provides you an opportunity to go beyond. So our language, we call these go beyond moments. And where Disney's got a storytelling culture, which then self-perpetuates, and you start sharing these all across the company. It gives you senses of pride. Sometimes it's tear-jerking, right? Well, we got one the other day and I don't even remember which community, Brian. This was in the rain. Somebody came out and their car had a flat tire, and one of our maintenance guys came out in the rain with a bike pump to give them a temporary pump to get their tire to a point so they could go get to a service shop. And they wrote to us, like, who does that? That this guy purposely came out in the rain. I didn't see him and flag him down, and he ignored me. He came out from a place I hadn't seen to help rescue me in this moment of need. Wow, Cortland is great. We make a point to share those go beyond moments. So our storytelling culture is in its nascency, but we do expect that more of these will start to move their way up and become legendary stories within Cortland.
I love the fact that you're empowering your DOs, as you say, to be able to make these decisions to, again, wow, and surprise and delight the resident. We recently had Hort Chelsea in here, who co-founded the Ritz-Carlton, and he just published a book. And one of the things that he had done with his front desk staff was that they had a budget of up to $2,000, and if they could use that in any way that they saw fit without having to check in, to just go beyond and make sure to either have to correct or take care of a customer or guest in that way. So I think that the hospitality aspect that Cortland is putting out there is, I think, a huge differentiator.
Cortland, we do not have a formal program in that regard, right? The $2,000 notion. This is a little bit
more.
Your
concept is there.
Correct. And I'll tie it directly to our core values. So a lot of companies' core values are integrity, respect, diversity, trust, honesty. Well, no kidding, right? That's kind of how we're supposed to operate our day-to-day lives.
Right.
Cortland's values are uniquely structured. One of them is called do the right thing for the right reason. That is constantly in the heads of all of our folks that just say, do the right thing for the right reason. We don't have to escalate through 5 channels of hierarchy to try to determine, can we do this or not? Just do the right thing for the right reason. If you went too far, we'll coach you. We're not going to yell at you. We're not going to punish you. We want to make sure that if your intent was true and your intent was right, we need to empower. When you have what is now probably pushing over 80,000 people who call Cortland home, and we're in a variety of markets in different time zones, you can't have Atlanta making the decisions. In that servant leadership model where Stephen is literally at the bottom and our jobs are to help facilitate success to the community and regional teams who can then day to day handle the interactions with a true feeling of empowerment because they do the right things for the right reason, then we know we'll be in a good position. Because it's not going to come from the top down of us trying to continue to try to make decisions on all of these individual instances. No,
because top is not customer facing.
That's right.
And there's no way to take care of them if you're floating at the top. So
and that's the point is, right, we're not at the top. We're at the bottom.
Right.
If you truly believe in that servant leader model, our job is we support everybody else whose eventual goal is the customer, and the customer is at the top. It sounds trite, and sounds almost
Not at
ridiculous.
all.
But that's not how this industry is wired. A lot of the industry puts the investor in the center. If you keep the investor happy, all things are good. And I'm like, no, you keep the resident happy. They're the ones that are paying the rents and paying the bills. Then the investors become happy.
But you also have your internal customer, which you're treating as your teams. So you're empowering the internal customer. You're giving them the tools they need in order to have the tools to help the customer, the external customer, right? So
we spend a lot of effort
you're doing.
on continue to curate intentionally the culture.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot deliver a great guest experience, customer experience, resident experience, fan experience if you don't have an equally great experience for your staff. In our words, our associates.
Exactly.
Disney's model was simple. Inspired, engaged leadership. Not management, leadership. Mm-hmm. You manage tasks, you lead people.
Right.
We'll create a staff of cast members who are inspired and engaged to delight every day. They will create happy, delighted customers.
Right.
Then your business results happen.
Right.
Most people start with, here's the pro forma and the business results. How do we get there?
Right.
It sounds simplistic, but that was very much the companies I've been a part of have all believed in that model.
And it's worked.
It has.
And it's been very successful. So the partner company that I work with is Keller Williams Realty. And Gary Keller, he's always had the servant leadership mindset. So when he brings on agent partners, that's the idea. What things can we do to help you, be successful in your business, and then therefore serve the customer and have all the tools you need to be problem solvers and whatever, things of that nature. So I love hearing that there are other companies out there that they're turning the models on their backsides basically, and showing that the top is there to lead you in your path to help us get to that final goal.
Yeah. Just to quickly jump in on the problem resolution topic in general, one of the things that we have introduced, I guess about 2 years ago now, to really communicate and publicly share that promise that we are going to be there to resolve your problems is through a service guarantee. So we are, from everything we've seen, we have the very best and strongest service guarantee in the industry, that for any routine maintenance problem that you may have in your apartment, we will solve that problem for you in 48 hours. So a lot of our competitors have this sort of fuzzy guarantee that they'll respond to your problem, so they'll drop by and say, "Yeah, your sink's leaking." But we're really proud, and
thanks for telling me. Yeah. I just called you about that.
Yeah. I mean, we've across the company, we've done a really amazing job of delivering on that guarantee and ensuring people's problems are solved within 48 hours, no matter whether it's the middle of the night on a Saturday or any other time during the week. And I think that is something that's really resonated with a lot of our residents and our prospects, as a clear, tangible promise of the level of commitment that we're going to have to them.
And about 90% of our service requests, inbound service requests, are resolved in 24 hours or less. Imagine calling saying, I've got an issue with my dishwasher, and by the time you come home from work, it's fixed, right?
I love that.
We want to continue. Great companies set the bar themselves.
Right.
They don't wait and say, the competition's doing this, let's move.
Right.
So in order for us to try to help facilitate that, we're the only ones in the industry who took a giant tractor trailer. We call it our mobile training unit, and it's all got Cortland branding on the side. But the entirety of the guts of that trailer are all of the systems, plumbing systems, electrical systems, AC systems that you might interact with, so you can get hands-on training, not just video training, hands-on training of how to fix that. Because if we want to aspire to that guarantee and then don't give our associates the tools to be able to be super effective in that, then we have a promise without a fulfillment behind it. And then, although it's 48 hours, as I mentioned, we're internally setting the bars. We want it to be 24 hours, and if you can't fix it in 24 hours, why? So now here's the next challenge that we go to. I said, that's great, but that's still, if your AC goes out in Dallas or in Atlanta this weekend when it's 91, 48 hours is interminable.
Yes.
So I said, great companies will move from service recovery to what we had coined at Disney as service discovery. If I know you as an individual, I can anticipate your needs. This is all about the personalization and customization and that's easier when you're coming to my hotels over and over again, and I've built a profile, and I know the pillow type you want and the drinks to put in your fridge, etc. That's awesome. I'm discovering your needs before you've ever really explicitly articulated them.
Right.
In the mechanical world, the ability to use Internet of Things as an opportunity to understand that AC unit seems to be running hot. Maybe it's because you keep the temperature at 62. Maybe because it's got low Freon. That's maybe the extent of what I know about AC. So something is wrong with it enough. So where maintenance became reactive, you call, I go.
Right.
It then moved to preventative, which is schedule-based, which is now I go there every week. I'm going to hit 20 AC units. It's going to move to predictive. I can now understand that there may be an issue and I should come check it out. That is service discovery. And you as a resident potentially never know. You never know that there was an issue and we resolved it. When the old saying, right, when technology is at its best, it resembles magic. It just sits in the background.
Right.
Disney's had that adage since the day I walked in the door. So much technology. Our goal is not necessarily to have you see it, just experience it. So.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's what a resident wants. They want to think about their life. They want to go to work. They want to come home. They want to walk the dog. They want to chill out. They want to sit on the couch and not worry about sweating while they're eating dinner. Nobody wants that. So I think that's fantastic. And you don't hear people talking about this in the apartment world at all. I work, on the periphery of that. And I think it's very hard to find high-level, responsive apartment complexes for, particularly when I'm working in short term, but it sometimes goes to long term due to the low inventory we're having right now. But we're finding that the management teams are not responsive, or it's very slow. And we're talking 5 days without an AC.
Ouch.
Yeah. So we're talking now we're going to an Airbnb. Now we're going to a friend's house or a colleague's house or things of that nature. So it's very refreshing.
And I'm not saying we don't have issues, right? And
of course.
And we just need to recover accordingly.
Of course.
But so far over the last few years, our ability to fulfill that promise we've even exceeded our own expectations. And now we're going to continue to set the bar higher. We're even asking ourselves, what's it going to take us to get to a 24-hour maintenance guarantee? Right?
Yes. Is that a lot more maintenance people?
Ideally, it's a combination of smarter maintenance. How do you give them the tools to make them more efficient when they're out in the field, so that what might have taken them an hour and then have to go back and enter a bunch of data into a computer to close out that ticket allows them to stay remote and go, hey, I just bought you back 30, 45 an hour of productivity a day.
Right.
As opposed to you getting in your little cart and driving back to HQ in the community and having to do the administrative part. In some cases, the tools aren't there. But we're trying to figure out more and better ways to help the effectiveness of the staff rather than just simply say we've got to add 3 more service personnel.
Which, is much more efficient, obviously. So let's talk about, I think you've covered a lot of what I wanted to talk about with you, but so one of the questions that you all had sent to me, how do you evangelize experience internally? I think we've talked a lot about that so far, where you're just empowering your teams. Is there anything else that you want our listeners to know about how Cortland is really trying to bring that branding to their markets? What other markets are you expanding to? And I think we talked a little bit about that. Where else do you think you're going to go, and what can we expect from Cortland in the near future?
So 2 comments there. One is, with respect to evangelizing internally, what I've done as kind of almost in a lead spokesperson kind of way, trying to inspire the organization, is not look at our own industry. Now, you have a broadcast here that clearly has got folks from a variety of industries listening, so the people listening probably already understand. So I use, whether it's Starbucks or Chick-fil-A or the Ritz or Disney, of course, or how Amazon is reinventing the game hourly, seemingly. I mean, what they are doing to put pressure on everybody else,
everyone
across all fields. This notion of lack of patience, right? Because if Amazon can now get you something in an hour, how come you can't respond to me? I mean, that subconsciously, people are making those connections. So we're trying to look across other industries. And when I share these other industry stories, the light bulbs go off. People start to go, oh my God, that makes sense. How have we never done this in multifamily? Well, it's because it's a finance investor-driven business, not a customer experience-driven business. Right? The other piece when you mentioned markets is we had done an assessment prior to my joining about some international opportunities and where we still have a long way to go here in the U.S. You'd be shocked at where it is somewhere in other parts of the world. UK in particular, and London, was one market where we looked. It is still a non-centralized landlord-tenant. We've moved away from the word. You haven't heard us use the word tenant once. They are residents to us, right? This is where they make their home. A tenant is got almost a lower expectation. The horror stories you hear of, that plumbing leak doesn't get fixed for 7 weeks, 8 weeks, ever. And the moment you complain, you have no rights. So the moment you complain and leave, the housing supply is so short compared to the demand, someone else will move in. So we believe that if we can bring this American style, and I'm not saying we want to Americanize it, but all of the things we've had to learn in a hyper-competitive market to compete around services and service, London hasn't seen anything like that. So we've established an office over there, and we're looking to try to continue to either acquire or build new communities where we can really say, you deserve better, England, than what you've had. We want you to elevate your expectations. The bar there, however, is just way lower than it is here in the U.S.
So you're going to explode over there because the bar has not even been set.
Well, I would... Yes, because of who Cortland is. However, it's an amazingly complicated market, we've learned, based on the complexities of each of the local towns who have their own planning boards. Think of it as a homeowners association for every little area, and they're so woefully short on housing. And then when you have got a great plan for housing, it's then like, well, we're not sure we want it in our backyard, right? So getting through those planners, so we have folks that are UK born and bred that are part of our planning teams, rather than we here in the U.S. trying to do it. They're the ones that are working the ground game with the council folks and the local authorities to try to help make sure that what we're going to build is value added to their community, and not just, you just, increase the density of our community, of our neighborhood unnecessarily.
And I think one of the other things that we do a lot in my world is, in terms of evangelizing, is really doing it, one community team, one individual at a time. And we, have the benefit of both through the review, the resident satisfaction program, as well as through all the online reviews we manage, of seeing primarily really, really positive comments and really, passionate comments from some of our residents about the amazing things that their community teams do for them, like the story Mike told earlier about the tire. And so really, my team, whenever we see those really amazing examples come through, we make a point of broadcasting those to the world. So, sharing this great story from a community in Orlando with everyone in Florida to say, hey, look at this amazing thing that this leasing consultant or this service guy did in their community to go above and beyond. And we... in all the research that we do, we're tracking performance not just at a community level, but even, really at an individual level. So we, every quarter we give shout outs to the service techs, the technicians that had, perfect or close to perfect scores on all of the resident feedback for that last quarter, which, is an amazing thing to be able to go in and fix that many people's, sinks and lights and whatever else.
It's huge.
Yeah, and get perfect fives for the whole quarter.
And then get bonus compensation associated with it.
Well, that's good, too.
You got to align your incentives. If you say you want to be a customer experience company, and then all of your incentives are aligned against financial targets or something, or cost cutting or what have you. Well, now you've got a incongruence between, well, I hear what corporate says, but I'm being held accountable for something else. So that accountability does have a bottom line focus to it for sure, but it also has these online reviews and customer experience ratings are important.
One last thing I wanted to ask you is, from the experience perspective, do you currently have does each community is there an app currently for residents? Because I'm thinking you're going in that direction.
Okay. So in the first 6 weeks I was on the job, I got contacted by because I got announced because of the uniqueness of the position. 6 different companies in 6 weeks pitching me a mobile app. none of which I actually thought were good. Not great, just not good.
Okay.
Very incomplete solutions, as if there wasn't a clear problem they were trying to address, right? There were a few that had notions of stuff, but it wasn't well put together. I'm not a mobile app expert, but I did help build My Disney Vacation. I was the product owner of that when we built that app experience for Walt Disney World and the app experiences for the stadium, the Falcons, and Atlanta United. So what I at least knew is you've got to make sure you get the basics right, the basic utility, before you give them the bells and whistles. And we saw way too many that were bells and whistles. And it said, well, can you pay rent through it? Well, no. What? Can I submit a maintenance request through it? Well, no. That requires integration with your back-end systems, and we don't have that. So I'm like, well, then we'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
So here's where we are presently. It's less about we need a mobile app than it is about us taking our next generation of service and services, all of these things that can make your life convenient, even if you have to pay for them. So everything from grocery delivery relationships to dry cleaning and laundry relationships to housekeeping relationships, where you can say, hey, you know what? I'm a busy millennial and I've got, travel I've got to do and I've got work I've got to do. I'd rather pay whatever, $60 to have my apartment cleaned every couple of months. I have to get dry cleaning anyway. The fact you actually pick it up and drop it off at my door in 24 hours for the same price it would cost me to put it in my car and go somewhere to drop it off. So, but how to package those in a way where you now have a platform, of which an app very possibly could be the platform, for you to interact with not all the basic stuff, how to contact my front office staff, how to submit and track maintenance requests, how to be able to pay my rent.
This is what I'm thinking.
How to be able to reserve storage. Hey, I want a storage facility. I need a garage. I want to rent the clubhouse because I want to throw a birthday party for my friend.
All of that.
To now this next generation of stuff of, here are local discounts I get. Here are all the services. Here are the moving services that help me when I have to move. Furniture rental services. Things where it's less about Cortland making any money off of that, quite frankly. It's about us bringing the third-party providers. Because if we do all those without a singular platform, then I'm handing to you, when you move in, here are 42 different services we offer. Choose which ones are interesting, versus you come here and here's your collection of services that you can engage with to help make your life easy. If we're not making your life easy, we're not contributing valuably. Besides, you've got a home. We want your home to be so convenient, so easy that you go, I'm a better person for living here because my whole life is easier.
Yes, and you're going to make my job really hard because then they're not leaving Cortland to buy a house.
Well, we've actually talked about some strategies that lean into that. In other words, we know we've got a lot of folks that are in our communities that just because of who they are demographically, not that we have a over-index, that are probably sitting on student debt, may not have great credit ratings, still might have a dream to own a home. What can we be doing through services we provide to help bolster their credit score, to help them better manage? Not that we want to be in the debt management, but can we build partnerships that help them start to pay down that student debt so they can be financially free? And at the end of the day, they'll tell everybody, well, this competes with Cortland. I left Cortland to go move into a house, and Cortland actually helped me facilitate that. Our goal isn't to try to get you to move in at age 25 and move out at age 60. We know you're going to continue to grow and move and get a new job and have kids and potentially own a home.
It's a great experience during that transition is what the impact.
These are things we're looking to. I'm not saying we're doing these things, but it gives you an idea of how Cortland thinks differently. And by the way, that's not an idea that comes from me. That literally came from our CEO.
It's a great
Mike,
idea.
let's figure out how to help them on their financial freedom where they can move out of an apartment, save some money, have the money for a down payment. So how to do that? Don't know. That's the challenge we're starting to look at. But it just gives you an idea of when you say, where is Cortland maybe going in the next 2 or 3 years? We want to give you the ability to go, everything I need is right here. They've really helped me improve my life, not just gave me a place to live.
You guys are awesome. I loved our conversation today, Mike Gomes and Brian Ericson. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on Customer Experience Radio. And I thank you all, listeners, for joining us. We'll see you next time.